for them being white, me being brown. And then my mom said I was just very, very young and asked her, said, Mom, why do you look different? There's so much pressure put on us as adoptees.
You were adopted, but from there was so much more that came out of it that you brought out of it.
My life has not been easy. I'm determined to help as many people as I can on this planet.
Welcome to TTalks, the podcast where we break down the journeys of game changers, innovators, and leaders transforming industries and communities alike. It's more than just success stories. We dive deep into the experiences, challenges, and triumphs that define their paths. At TTalks, we dive into the stories of the leaders changing our world. I'm your host, TJ Walia. My guest today is an individual who was born out of resilience, an individual who has seen and faced it all, but despite all of that, continues to shine and lift others. Rachel, welcome to TTalks.
Thank you, TJ, so much for having me, and it's an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you.
Pleasure's mine. I've seen so many things that you've done, Rachel. You've got an incredible journey and a story behind you. I'd love to dive into that. Just, what that story looks like for you, that life journey and your journey to help others, because I think that's what's really, really inspiring out of all of this is the aspects that you went through and you dealt with, but on top of that, taking all those lessons, converting them into lessons for others.
My journey starts in Tamil Nadu, India. My mom died 2 days after giving birth. I'm looking for my biological father. I was put in the home of the founder of the orphanage and was adopted by a couple, my parents from New York City. So I was adopted between about 11 months, 12 months old. I am an Indian Jewish woman. My life has not been easy at all whatsoever. And I am determined, because I never forget my roots, where I come from. I'm determined to help as many people as I can on this planet.
A lot of people have preconceived notions of, parents who are adopting. Do they love the same way? Do they not? I've heard so many conversations. It's not the same. Help me understand that and what that looks like, because you've done well for yourself, given the circumstances that you were dealt with, that life dealt you. You had an opportunity. You got you were adopted, but from there was so much more that came out of it that you brought out of it, I would say, and the family that supported you. Help us understand a little bit about that, please.
My parents are incredible, phenomenal people. I deeply respect them. I love them very much. What they did right. So my parents have 2 biological children, and they made the choice for their 3rd child to adopt. There are many mistakes that people do when it comes to adoptees and adoption. My parents didn't make those mistakes. They never treated me any different from their biological children. We as adoptees, we struggle with a lot. We really do. There are many long-term effects of adoption, and I went to school I minored in psychology and gender studies. And I took a family class, and I did like a 25 to 30 page paper on adoption. We have, and TJ, I'm very vocal about using my voice for mental health. There's a tremendous amount of pressure put on adoptees. And I'm going to explain this. So people, and obviously I don't look like my parents. They're white, brown hair, brown eyes. People will say to my mom, and will say, oh, how lucky is she that we adopted her. And so my mother's response is she turns around and she goes, how lucky are we? It's not the other way around. And my mom's quick to say that. They've never made me feel any difference. Now, one of the biggest mistakes people do when it comes to adoptees is, so if my parents ever introduced me as an adopted child, That would have been the line for me. They don't do that. They say, "This is my daughter, Rachel." They've never, ever once tried to make me feel less than. They've never, ever done that. You're missing something your entire life. You are missing so much. When I turned 16, my parents at my sweet 16 gave me two books with every telegram, Western Union, all it was basically my adoption story. It was written in the 70s, each letter, and so I'm able to do the search that I need to do. There's so much pressure put on us as adoptees. I just told my parents a year ago. I always walked that line. I mean, it was because I didn't know if I was going to get returned. So I literally told my parents a year ago. And they said to me, and I carried that in my mind and in my heart my entire life. And they said, "Why didn't you say anything? That would have taken away the stress things." They're like, "You're talking 18 years that you did that." I am very different from my family. Very, very different. I have a psychologist in the family, my uncle, and we talk about the nature versus nurture conversation. I'm night and day. I'm not wired the same way at all whatsoever.
That's incredible. And just talking about fitting in essentially, right? That's what it comes down to. And if the family is okay with it, and then you've got the people outside, and kudos to your mom for always stepping in and saying, no, no, we're lucky to have her. That has a huge impact on an individual. And the world is not generous when it comes to reminding people of what the realities are. Whether they do it directly or indirectly or accidentally, they still do it. And we find ways of being identified as the one that's not fitting in, or for whatever reason. That resilience, and I know you kept a lot inside you as well. That, like, how did you build that resilience? How did they build that resilience? Were there a lot of active conversations, with your siblings? What did that look like?
They were always very open about the adoption, obviously, with them being white, me being brown. And then my mom said I was just very, very young, and asked her, said, "Mom, why do you look different for me?" And they always talked about my adoption. Still to this day, they'll still answer a question if I have it. They know I have felt like an outsider my entire life. They know that. And it's nothing they did, but it's just the way I feel. I've been trying to find that for myself. I've been trying to find that. And I have been very, very fortunate because I have found it. You have your family, and then you have your chosen family. And I have that. I have my tribe, my inner circle that, are family to me. And you can have that. I always tell my parents, and they understand it. I'm like, it has nothing to do with you. It's my emotions of not fitting in. And it's hard and it's difficult. And I hear it from my friends who are adopted all the time. I had the honor and privilege. There's Adoption Day, which I think is in November. And this group in Florida asked me to come speak. It was, I had to do it virtually. All these children were getting adopted, right? It was their day in court, right? So the judge had me do it virtually. And all these, you have to imagine that they're ready. They're sitting there in the courtroom with their families. And the mess, and I spoke to these future adoptees and said, the most important thing that I can tell you right now is you're not alone. And the adoptee community will be here to support you on the journey.
Fitting in was a challenge in itself. And it's not about necessarily about how we feel. Sometimes we don't even realize that we're not fitting in, but it's how others make you feel. that really emphasizes on it. And so growing up in Canada, I tie my turban in a very different way than they do in India for the most part. It's a very westernized turban. So amongst the general population in Canada when I was growing up, I didn't fit in because I was the only person wearing a turban going to school, right? I was in an all Jewish school as well. And majority of the people did not connect with me or resonate with me. When I would go back to India to visit family, because of the way I tied my turban, because of the way I speak, I didn't fit in. So even though a nation where I'm originally from, because of the changes that I had in my environment, my upbringing, I didn't fit in. And one thing I realized over the years is that it doesn't matter, I guess, because we're not going to be able to please everyone
No, it's
as
a
it comes into fitting in and what they want, what they want to expect. I had this at work. I was at Microsoft for the longest time, and we would have scenarios where we were talking about diversity and inclusion. And yes, that was an important topic to talk about. But one of the most bizarre things happened to me, Rachel. Before talking about D&I, everything was normal for me because, I can communicate, I can get along with people, I understand the culture, I understand the current affairs and trends that are going on. I can have an intellectual conversation on some days. But when they started talking about D&I, my own friends, because they were focusing on D&I, said, oh, we need to be inclusive because TJ's here. So all of a sudden, the people that didn't have any biases against what I looked like or wanted to spot me out are doing it now because we highlighted an initiative about D&I and said, we have to be inclusive. So therefore, look out for the people that look different and let's be inclusive with them.
which is such a mistake. It's a mistake. I've been teaching diversity awareness for over 17 years, right? I go into companies, I've done it with the military, I go and speak at universities. And I'm really sorry to hear your experiences, and I understand exactly what you're talking about. When I went back to India, this was my first time going back. I remember the doors opening. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I was waiting for someone to pick me up, and just my feet being on the ground, it was home, right? Just like, I'm an Indian American woman. So, like, America is my home, India is my home. And I remember the ancestral part of me lit up. It absolutely, and when I go there, I go usually for about 3 weeks or something. But I also, like you, I have to, I dress Indian when I do everything I need to do when I'm in India. But like you, a lot of people ask, they could tell that I'm from America, they can tell that I'm not. But it's teaching both cultures, both sides of it. And so I answer every question that people have and I stay at my orphanage when I go. And I answer all those questions when I'm out and about and people are asking, and it's you and me educating both countries. And listen, I've had the worst experiences when due to the color of my skin, the worst. So we can continue to use our voices to spread love, kindness. I have been in so many situations, TJ, with what you're talking about. I remember in one class, I was taking Western Civ in university, Western civilizations. I was the only Jewish person in the classroom, and there was only one Muslim person in the classroom. The professor had made this bold statement. This is how he introduced Judaism to this class. He said, his exact words, Jews have never contributed to this world. I was sick to my stomach, thinking I'm the only Jewish person. Everybody else in the class, this is how they're going to learn about Judaism. I was physically sick to my stomach. I went home that night and wrote a 25 to 30 page paper on what Jews have done and contributed. Next class, I went in, I put it on his desk and said, "This is what we have contributed."
Such a horrific experience because you have these institutional leaders who are supposed to be spreading knowledge and bringing people and communities together, and instead you're dividing, and this is what they're doing. It's not the way, and it concerns me that these are the educated, quote unquote, educated people that try to make an impact in this world. Yet what they're doing is they're spreading hate.
So I put all these people in there, what they've contributed, and everything that was created or the reason why things exist today. And that's how I handle it. The thing is, people have underestimated me my entire life. They have judged me, criticized me, condemned me based on the color of my skin. And so that's why I teach diversity awareness.
And Rachel, most people get suppressed by that. Most people are like, you know what, the world is cruel to me, the world is mean to me, and I've had enough, I can't deal with this. You stood up to that. Where did that come from? Where does that perspective of, because I'm sure there were days you're just like, like, you know what, I've had enough of this. But those same days you stood up again and again and again, and you continue to do so. Where does that come from? Where does that stem from?
So I have to pick and choose when it has to be safe for me. There's many times I have to walk away from the hate and the spewing and the names that I've been called. It has to be a safe situation for me to do it. I've been a public speaker for over 17 years, and the only time I have turned down speaking is because, and it's two of my friends who are incredible. He was a history teacher for 30 years. This was a couple of years back. He was going to do this whole thing on love and peace, right? But it was going to be in a public park where there was no security, no nothing. And I said to him, I can't do this. So every time I speak, it's behind closed doors. But I said, I can't get on that stage in a public park. And they understood it. They're like family. They're like, we get it. You don't want to put yourself. I said, every time I speak, it's behind closed doors, or it's a controlled crowd, or there's security there. So I have to pick and choose. I have so much racial trauma. So much. And that is a very real thing. And I mean, very, very terrifying things have happened to me due to the color of my skin.
Wow. Wow. And is this because of the environment you grew up in, or irrespective of the environment, it's what you've basically faced throughout the years? Where does that come from?
It comes from people making assumptions. It comes from people not giving me that chance. One of them, I was at lunch many years ago, and with one of my best girlfriends, I had put my credit card down on the table, right? We take it, they come back, and the waitress hands it back to my girlfriend. And my friend said, "That's not mine, that's hers." And the waitress actually said to us, there's no way she could have a credit card. So one of my best friends is from Long Island, from New York. And she turned around and she said, "Excuse me?" She's like, "There's no way she could have a credit card. It's not impossible." I got up and left the restaurant, and she handled it. That's one situation. I have been followed so many times in stores that it's beyond ridiculous. So when I go in, and like my girlfriend and I did an experiment one time a couple years back, and she counted how many people were following me in the store, and she was physically sick to her stomach. I've been hunted by a truck of men who came after me when I was walking one day. This was a couple years back. And I don't know if you know this, but there was a couple of years back, there was this thing where they were looking for brown women and, African American women. So they'd get in a truck, and what they were doing is they were grabbing us and then they were going to put us in a tree and hang us. I've seen it. I've experienced it all. So that's why, like, it's important for people to realize the trauma that goes on with this. Whenever something like that happens to me, it would probably take me 2 days to get off the couch.
There are times you have to check your back, just to see what's going on. I personally, growing up in Toronto, haven't experienced it to that extent. The only one time I've experienced any racism was when I moved to Edmonton. And having grown up in Toronto, I thought everything was just normal because I, quote unquote, fit in, and this was normal. I went to Edmonton, and literally at a parking lot of a Costco, racial slurs being thrown at me. Go back to your country. Road rage, and I was like, for what?
Fear, ignorance, not understanding, who. And here's, whenever I teach about this, I always say to people, I don't associate, so every person is different, right? So people have asked me when I talk, they say, how are you still compassionate? How are you still able not? And I said, it's very, very simple. One person who makes that mistake with me doesn't represent the entire population.
I'll share something with you on that, Rachel, where my dad taught me this growing up, and he said to me, he goes, if you saw a scorpion drowning and you tried to save it and you put your hand in the water to pull it out, what would happen? I'd say, it will probably sting me. And he goes, even though you're trying to save the scorpion from drowning or whatever have you, it will still sting. And he goes, the reason is because it's in its DNA to sting. This is all it's designed to do. This is how some people are. And in your case, you are designed to give and help. That is in your DNA, irrespective of what other people and the environments do to you. You're constantly giving back, Rachel.
I'm big on thinking before I speak, which is a problem that most people don't do. They have no filter going on up there. You know what I'm talking about. So I've had to learn and just make the choice. Now, does it mean that it's easy? Does it mean that I don't have moments where I want to say something? I want to stand up for myself. It has to be a safe option for me to do that. I have to feel safe and secure and say, this is not okay. This is not okay.
In the corporate world, in the workplace where they're feeling isolated, what's your advice for someone to continue on? Because there are a lot of folks that I talk to, I work with, that say, I went into work and no one acknowledged me at all. They didn't even look at me. They didn't even know I existed or cared. And my feedback to them usually is, do what you need to do. Go in, do your business, and get out. Like, why are you waiting for others to validate your existence? But what are your thoughts on this, Rachel?
This comes down to training, right? Because like I said, that's what I do. I do diversity and inclusion training. First of all, if you and I saw that, we'd be like, excuse me, what are you doing? Like, welcome. How can we help you? That's what you do. So it's really up to the corporation whether or not they're providing that training. If that culture is not established the right way for diversity, that's on them. Right? And then it's our job, you and me, and our job is to go in and train them. Because I would never, ever allow that.
Absolutely. And what's your advice for the individuals that are going through that, right? Because they take it upon themselves. They think there's something wrong with them in what they're doing. But to your point, it's a training issue. It's other people not being aware of how to treat someone coming into an environment, how to welcome them, how to work with them, how to engage with them. They're missing out on all of that.
People don't realize, as adults, we still have the mentality of what happened to us as children. It's there. That same thing, like, am I going to have a seat at that table? Is it going to be there for me? And adults are scarred from the experiences they had when they were picked last playing dodgeball when they were a kid, or they, all the cliques. I mean, that is really, really difficult. So an adult has to deal with that all over again. Everything that they experienced, all the trauma, now they're facing it as an adult. I would be walking up to whoever the manager is, whoever the trainer is, and saying, there's something wrong with your culture. Not only are they responsible for taking care of all the people on that level, but right now more than ever, the corporations need to take care of people's mental health. So you've got that adult who is now sitting at that empty lunch table. They feel that pain. So that's why I'm always like, the more the merrier. Let's include people. Let's bring them into the conversation. So like when I give talks, if I see something in the Q&A part, I'll look for those people. You can tell that they want to get up and they want to talk. They want their voice to be heard.
Absolutely. And they don't have that confidence to raise up that hand, and that courage, and they rather suppress their own feelings and thoughts and give up on that opportunity, which isn't fair because the loudest person in the room is the one who gets the attention, sadly.
So I was in a meeting in a country, and I was there, and I was there with one of my friends, and I was there because it was my answer on the project. Okay, they didn't know this. I was the only woman in the room. I walk into this meeting. I sit down on this couch with my friend from London. No one talks to me in the meeting. Not one of the men turned around and spoke to me. So my friend knew why I was there. It was my answer, yes or no, if the project went forward. I had another role in the project. Finally, my friend from London said, "What are you doing? Why are none of you listening to her or speaking to her?" They're like, "Well, does she have that?" They didn't know what to say. And my friend said, "Guess what?" And he actually said to them, "She's the one, it's her answer that moves this project forward." So maybe my friend was so upset, and he goes, "Maybe it's a good idea if you turn around, look her in the eyes and listen to what she has to say." So at the very end of it, all of a sudden it became, "Miss Beck, how can we help you? Miss Beck, what can we do for you?" Once they found out what my role was, once they figured out that it was my decision to move everything forward, they got it. And my friend had said to them exactly what you're talking about. I sat there on the couch very quietly, listening to the whole meeting. So it's also sometimes the silent person in the room has all the answers too.
Your focus is on bringing out teams and individuals. So talk to me a little bit about what inspired you to go down this path. There's a million different things that you could have done and taken and shied away from all that. What inspired you to go in and say, you know what, I want to make a difference on this front here?
That give back to this world, do the right thing. So I saw this example through my mom, my dad, my aunt, and uncle. So when I go to dinner with people, TJ, and people are complaining, and you know what I do? They're complaining about what's going on in the country. They're complaining about what's going on in the world. I turn around, I look at them, and I go, "What are you doing to solve the problems?" And they're like, "Nothing." And then I go back and I go, "Well, maybe it's a good idea to stop complaining." And they don't know what to say. I'm like, think very hard as you're complaining. If you're not doing something to solve that problem, you've got nothing to complain about.
Yeah, essentially, you're part of the problem at that point.
That's exactly what I tell them. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's easy for people to give lip service, right? It's easy for people to say what they want to say, but at the same time, let it be someone else's problem. Let someone else do the work. But the people that actually get up and make the difference are the ones that are going to be able to make the change in not only their own lives, but the lives of others. And it's very inspiring from that perspective. And for our guests who need to understand how to connect with you, how to find you. I guess, what social platforms do you live on, Rachel, for the most part?
I live on LinkedIn. I'm not on any other platform. Like people share stuff, they put it on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. But yeah, that's where people can find me. I'm here to help. Right now, and you're gonna see me put a video out about this week. We need people to help each other more. We need people to send that encouraging word. We need people to just be kinder right now. That's what we need now more than ever. More than ever.
Yeah, you got to spread kindness. No, you're bang on, and I think a lot of the misconceptions and misnotions of us growing up and saying, strangers are like this, strangers are like that, and you got to. It's humans. It's human nature. There are going to be some that are good. There are going to be some that are bad, and sometimes there's strangers that come to a rescue, and then there's sometimes strangers that come to harm. Right. So we have to learn how to identify the right individuals, the right ones we connect with, the right ones we bond with, and at the same time the right ones that we can help out. And we all have something to help someone else with. We all have different skills, abilities, understandings. We're at different stages of our journey. We sometimes feel that, hey, what do I have that I can help someone else? Well, maybe you're looking at the wrong person to help, right? Maybe there's someone else that you should be looking at that you actually can help and be a part of. I had a conversation with one of my clients just last week, and they were like, "What do I have to offer on LinkedIn?" We were talking about branding and using AI technologies to help with their brand, and they're like, "What do I have to help, TJ?" And I said, "Listen, you're looking at the wrong person. If you're going to look at, let's say Elon Musk, maybe you have nothing to help them on leadership and coaching and development. But how about someone who's aspiring to be a leader like yourself at the stage that you're at? Look at people that are trying to get to where you're at. Then you've got lots to share and help with. You can open up that path. You can open up their eyes on different perspectives and different challenges that they're going to come across. So your target audience is one thing that you have to identify, but we all have something that we can give back and help others with.
Right now, more than ever, we need, with all the divisiveness that's going on in this country, that's going on in this world, we need to pull people back. It's a very scary time right now. We all know that. It's a very scary time. And all we can do is do our best job as a human being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Give it a shot. That's what it comes down to. No, this is perfect, Rachel. Rachel, I want to change gears a little bit. So the next
Yes,
segment
sir.
of our conversation is called the rapid fire segment. The rules are very simple. I'm going to ask you a question, and you have to respond with the first word that comes to mind.
Oh,
Are you
I
good with
love
it?
it. Yes, I'm ready. Let's do it. Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So the first question: tea or coffee?
Both. All day long.
I think you're the first guest that said both to that question. Usually they're very, very split between it. So that's amazing. Favorite book, Rachel?
Oh, I have Lion. Did you read that book?
I have not read Lion. I
Have
will
you
have to
seen the
definitely check that
movie?
one out.
Definitely check
I
out the
have.
movie.
I have.
So you've seen the okay, so it's that book based on I had a profound reaction to it. You've seen the movie. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. And then I have my like childhood books. I also love. I'm a big reader. I'm a very, very big reader. When I was a kid, because my mom really reading was huge growing up. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. I love those books. And I think it's even more important that people go back and read that book as an adult.
I've seen the movie because my kids watch, my girls watch them all the time. So I've seen the movies, but I haven't read the book on that. But I want to connect on Lion a little bit because I saw the movie. Obviously, I would look at it from a different perspective. How does it showcase what you went through?
It's that moment. It was the moment when they finally find each other, right? That very deep moment when he's finally there and he's walking, and that's every moment an adoptee thinks about. We put it in our head, and we're like, and then and we're like, okay, this is gonna happen. Like, and the percentage of what he went through. I mean, you remember the maps and how we started from the train station, and
Yeah.
then there was a water tower, and
Yeah.
I understood that drive. I understood his determination. And every time I'm in India, I do more searching, right? I do more digging on my roots.
Wow. 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 Very, very interesting. Um, moving on to our next question. One word that describes you.
I'm I'm trying the best that I can every day to help as many people as I can. I think it was way more than one word. I just realized. So I would say, I would say, if I had to describe three,
We'll do three.
resilient, resilient. I've survived two attempted rapes where people saved my life. I've survived an attempted kidnapping. My bodyguard at the time saved my life. Um, Resilient. I had battled a disease for 20 years, endometriosis. I donated one of my ovaries to science to help find a cure for the disease.
The next one, early bird or night owl?
Early bird. I am a hardcore morning person.
Okay. And my last question, Rachel. If animals could talk, which one would you want to have a conversation with outside of any pets you own?
Okay, so my favorite animals in the world are dolphins. I've always had a deep, deep connection to them, and I snorkel, scuba dive, and dogs. So for me, it's dolphin, dogs, and butterflies. I have had a deep connection to butterflies most of my life, and they'll show
Wow.
up. They'll show up in the most remote areas every time. And
Amazing.
because of the metamorphosis, for caterpillar to chrysalis out,
Yeah.
I deeply resonate with butterflies. I really, really do, and
Amazing.
dolphins.
Amazing. Very cool. Very cool. And Rachel, listen, thank you very, very much for being here, sharing your story, sharing lessons about resilience, sharing lessons about what it takes to keep on standing back up again, given what life deals with us. And I'm sure plenty of our viewers will have many takeaways from this conversation, especially when it comes to the challenges we face and how big we make them when they're really not big challenges at all. When we start realizing that there's others who've gone through a lot more and continue to. And we have to appreciate the life that is given to us, that's handed to us, and we have to make the most out of it. And your lessons, these are going to stay with me for a very long time as well. And I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to have this conversation. So thank you again, Rachel.